Some of you know, but now some of you are finding out, I am from pretty far upstate originally. The real upstate. Not Peekskill, Beacon, or Poughkeepsie. Not Rhinebeck, Hudson, or Castleton. Not the capital region, Troy, Cohoes, Waterford. No, you gotta keep going up the river. Up as far as Mechanicville, and then you still got to hang a right and keep going another almost hour east to finally get out to where I'm from, out in the countryside, out deep in Washington County, to a place where New Yorkers still take fishing quite seriously. When I was young, we had lots of families that hunted and fished, but no one was into bass fishing more than Scott. He was known for many things. He was good sport, fundamentally kind, funny, outdoorsy, but above all, Scott was best in class for fishing. Now, don't get me wrong, we all had poles and would go out to the Battenkill River or down to one of the many lakes that's up there to mess around for an afternoon, go swimming, try to catch maybe a sunfish. But from a very young age, Scott put us all to shame. He would participate in bass fishing tournaments. Or he'd come to school and tell us about the huge pike that he and his father had dredged up in the bottom of the lake. Or about how he'd just come back from fly fishing in the mountains or some deep sea fishing excursion. And trust me, these weren't wild fish stories. These weren't tall tales. I just checked in on him, and he's now the fishing team lead at Bass Pro Shops. This is a guy who, from a young age, has taken fishing seriously. What was the difference between us, I sometimes wondered, that he can be so successful in an area that I seem to have no discernible skill? Certainly time, effort, and practice were part of it, but as we got older, I began to realize that technology had something to do with it. Scott had better tools, an individualized rod and net, just perfect for him. A more stable boat with those built-in fishing seats that let you swivel on them, and a little spot to hold your pole, take some stress off. His boat had a trolling motor that was really quiet so it wouldn't scare the fish away. And eventually, once they were invented, Scott had a fish finder, that little radar device that lets us look down into the water beyond the cloudy haze through which our eyes can't see. But I don't talk about the technology, I don't say that to take away anything from Scott's skills. Tools or no, through many hours and days and even years, he had developed an intuition about where the fish were more likely to be, and what type of fish they were more likely to be, and what those particular fish in that particular spot more likely wanted to eat. And I tell you about Scott because I dare say that Simon Peter, Thomas, Nathaniel, and the sons of Zebedee, these aquatic expeditioners in our gospel passage this morning, were far more like Scott than they were like me. Their failure to catch fish had nothing to do with being amateurs. You may recall, after all, that Peter had been a fisherman before becoming Jesus' disciple. He had been raised and apprenticed under his father, just like Scott, and had been part of a presumably profitable venture before answering the call to be part of Jesus' ministry to all of Israel. And so now, post-crucifixion, when it seems like that prophetic ministry is over, that it has run its course, Peter does the only thing he can think to do is he goes back, picks up his nets once again, and says, I'm going fishing. As if to say, I guess I'm going back to what I was doing before all of this happened. Before all the conflict, before these dark days, before the trauma, I guess I'll just go back to what I know how to do. Now, there's no reason to suspect that Peter's former skill had deserted him. or the skill of his fellow fishermen. They still have the appropriate tools for the job, the appropriate technologies, and the intuition birthed through many years of dedication to this craft. They knew where the fish were most likely to be, and they knew exactly what type of fish they were most looking to catch, and they even knew what those fish wanted to eat. And yet, despite casting out their nets all throughout the night, there was nothing. Can you imagine being out on this inland sea in the dark with only the moon and the stars, this hazy glow coming down to light your way, doing this thing that you know how to do, and yet there's nothing? As the dawn slips over the horizon, a strange man on the shore calls out, "Cast your nets out on the other side!" That must have been awkward. But Peter and the disciples, they decide to listen to this call. And when these fishing experts do something counter to what they would normally expect to be effective, suddenly, success, overwhelming success, so much success that they can't even bring in this haul. Now, there's a lot of ways to interpret this story, a lot of popular and effective and helpful ways to approach this text in a modern setting. I'm just going to give you the one. For 50 years, we, the mainline church, have been fishing in the dark with practically nothing to show for it. We've been repeating the same processes over and over again. We've been casting out nets in the same places that we've always cast them. We know how to do this, right? We're expert fishermen. We used to be the biggest and the best. We know exactly what we're doing. But somehow it seems that the fish have dried up. They've gone away. We can't find them anymore. And we really need to be listening to that Jesus call to cast our nets out on the other side, to do things differently than the way we've been accustomed to doing them, to reach out to different people than we normally would. We need to change up how we do ministry if we're going to bring in that huge haul. That's a good interpretation. There's truth in that, and it's relevant not only to the church at large, but to our churches here in the river towns. What's that famous quote attributed to Einstein? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. If it's not working, try something different. And by that, we don't mean try something once, and if that doesn't work, abandon it and go back to casting your nets the same way you've always done it. Well, I tried it, Pastor, but it didn't work. Well, how many times did you try it? How many different people did you try it with? In how many places and contexts did you try it? Friends, we all know that there is very little integrity in a one-off trial, where the first time it fails, you abandon the project. That's the very definition of something we call confirmation bias, where as soon as the negative results you expected to happen, or even hoped to happen, occurs, we stop the experiment as if all the results are in. As if all the data has been compiled and we get to sit on our throne of know-it-allness and say, "See, I told you so." We do it with the news, we do it with relationships, and we do it with ministry all the time. I told you that wasn't going to work. Now, I can give you a recent personal example of how we need to fight back against our confirmation bias in ministry. Here at Ardsley, we recently hosted for the second time the semi-annual concert for a School of Rock-type local business. Now, I'm absolutely in favor of opening our doors to the community as a practice that has inherent and intrinsic value. And I was grateful for the opportunity to welcome the parents and families into our space. But the first time, my expectations were quite low that anything might come of it in terms of really making a genuine connection or in terms of prompting a genuine ministry opportunity. And that first time, last fall, my expectations were confirmed. Nothing tangible really happened of it, other than the lovely fact that these folks wanted to come back for their spring concert too. Now, if I had let my confirmation bias run wild, I might have thought, yeah, nothing really came of it last time. So this time around, it probably isn't worth my time or energy to really participate. Sure, of course they can use the building. Come on in, you can use the building. That's perfectly fine. But there's probably better uses of my time than to participate. But I didn't think like that, and I didn't say that. And so instead, when I showed up to give a welcome the second time, I was wonderfully surprised to find that my colleague and friend, Rabbi Reeser from Temple Beth Shalom, was here. His children were part of the program. And not only did we say hi and exchange pleasantries by the door, but his presence here, right about where Alana is sitting, changed my welcome, changed my greeting. It prompted me to cast my net on the other side, as it were. And so instead of simply welcoming and inviting these folks into this church, this is what I said. Welcome to Ardsley United Methodist Church. It is such a pleasure and privilege to welcome you into our beautiful sanctuary. In particular, I am grateful to see my friend, Rabbi Reeser, here. We have been doing so much ecumenical and interfaith work together throughout the river towns across these last 6 months. So I think I'm on safe ground to say that in these trying times, if you or your family are in need of support, please reach out to any one of us. Regardless of your tradition or experience, all of the clergy of the river towns, all of our congregations are here to help. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us. It felt right. Not just to welcome people into my church or into my tradition, but to welcome and invite people back to faith and faith communities writ more broadly, wherever it is the right place for you to show up and find community. Whichever village you may live in, whichever faith tradition you come from, there are clergy throughout all of these villages, and even beyond, who are here for you. Rabbi Reeser thought it felt right too. And it seems like the families thought it felt right as well, because that more inclusive, that broader, that more open welcome got a standing ovation. Now, I don't know what will come of it yet, but a few weeks later, as I was standing in line at the grocery store, the man in front of me at the checkout line turned around, he did a double take, and he said, "Hey, aren't you that priest from the Methodist church?" And I said, "Yes." And I shook his hand, and I asked him how his family was doing. It's a start. It's a new opportunity to rebuild trust and a relationship with the community outside our doors. And it wouldn't have happened if we'd let a sort of local church protectionism or a confirmation bias run roughshod over the opportunity to put our best foot forward and try again to build healthy and beautiful bridges with our neighbors. So this Communion Sunday, let us approach this table yet again in a spirit of newness, with the renewed hope that something unexpected might happen as we cast our nets out on the other side, as we begin to do things a little bit differently. Let us not be consumed by confirmation bias, but be open to the possibility that just in opening ourselves up, we might fall and fail forward into the reign of grace. That even as we, yes, continue to faithfully steward the holy resources that have been placed into our care, we might also listen intently, fervently, passionately for that voice of Jesus calling out to us from the shoreline, "Cast your nets on the other side!" Let's not look backward, but be changed and renewed and transformed by the Son of the living